All right, what's up, people? Welcome to Lance Independent, where our goal is to review every video on the internet on metaethics. I'll be doing other stuff on this channel too, but this one I was just really animated by seeing this because it had so many views. I see 18,000 likes, over 2,000 bookmarks, 1,806 comments. This is a video from Theist Brooks over on TikTok, and I'm going to be reviewing that. Now, the issue is that Theist Brooks has multiple times posted videos over on TikTok about metaethics. And I normally am very respectful towards people and I'll do my best to be respectful. But Theist Brooks doesn't know what he's talking about and does not understand metaethics at all. And I'm not gonna I'm not gonna fling insults or anything, but I'm tired of this nonsense. I've posted multiple responses and I've invited Theist Brooks to have a conversation about metaethics numerous times. I've been ignored every time. That's fine. Nobody, I don't, nobody like has an obligation to talk to me, but it is remarkable that someone would say such ridiculous things about metaethics over and over and over and show no interest, a total lack of awareness, no ability to respond, no ability to address criticism from people that understand the topic better than Theist Brooks does. I don't normally just come out and just say, I understand this topic better than somebody else does. I have people on my channel that I disagree with. I review videos. Even when I very strongly disagree with people, I try my best to be charitable. I'm not always successful, but I try my best. But this one really, really annoyed me. And so we're going to review that. And I do want to, just say, Theist Brooks, please have a discussion with me or somebody that studies metaethics. Please try to learn something about the topic. I'm sorry, but you'll see what I'm talking about when I get into the video. All right. Let's say hi to everybody. All right, we got Jack here. I don't even know when I started the video. So Jack, you get 1,000 Lance Loot. Mason, you get 500. Cloud of Time, you get 250. Let's get into the video. I'm sorry. I don't like to talk that way about people, but this one just really bugged me. Okay, one moment. All right, let's get into it.
When people tell me that I can't be a good person without...
By the way, everybody, let me know if you could hear it okay. The audio sounds fine to me. I don't know how it sounds for you. Just so you know, I'm a little bit under the weather. That's a stupid phrase. I'm kind of sick. I have some kind of cold or something. And welcome everybody. I didn't even say hi to everybody else. I just wanted to get right into the video. Alex Breeding, rarely catch these lives. Fuck yeah. Yeah, because I normally don't do them so late. Sapir says hi, Lance. Matthias says, yo, Lance. Sapir says hi, chat. Harmonica says, yo. Mason Amscombe says, hi, Lance. Good evening. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody. I like to read the chat while I still have the ability to do that. If this channel ever grows, I don't know how capable I'll be of doing that. I have nothing to drink. Okay. And a little bit sick, so you know what? Let me get some water. Give me 1 second. No, you know what? No, we're not going to get into the video. I don't like it when it's paused like that. All right. Let's get into it.
Without God or the Bible, I often ask them this.
All right, let's hear it.
Take a random page from this Bible, and you have to do exactly what it says, no matter what it says, both Old and New Testament, by the way. How much faith would you have in your Bible then?
I would have a lot of faith.
If he has a lot of faith, I would like to see him go ahead and do this. I only got about a minute into the video. It's 2 minutes long. So I don't know if he opens up the Bible and has a look, so if he has so much faith, do it, So let's see if he does it. If he doesn't do it, I think that is a pretty good indicator that he doesn't have that much faith, because he could do, in fact, doing it recorded on a video wouldn't even be good enough. He should do it live. But of course, in fact, I wouldn't want a Christian to do this live, because there's a good chance they'd point to something horrific that they would have to do if you're including the Old Testament. And that wouldn't be good. I don't want them to do that. I mean, it's bad enough that I wouldn't even want someone to do it as a prank or a joke or something. All right.
It's a fact that the Western world is completely saturated by the Christian ethic. So before I get to your...
Yeah, but so what? How is that relevant to whether or not, if you chose a random event in the Bible to enact or act upon or something, that there's a good chance that it would be something pretty bad?
Fair example, let me do this game for your worldview. Since you have no objective foundation of morality without God, I'm going to
See, so right away, since you have no objective foundation without God, right away, the presumption that if you don't believe in God, you can't have objective morality. So that's not true. There's no good argument that that's true. So I've never seen any theist present a good argument that without God, you can't have objective morality. Now, there is a trivial sense in which I do think without God, you can't have objective morality, but that's because I don't think you could have objective morality at all. But there is no special relation between theism and objective morality where if theism is true, then you get moral realism for free or something like that. Theism doesn't do a particularly good job of accounting for moral realism above and beyond what you're capable of with the available secular resources, which is to say, none of them do a good job. But it's not like theism does much, much better. So this whole idea that theists in the apologetics world have that like you can't have moral realism without God, they don't have good arguments for this. This is a pretty silly position that they take. They rarely offer anything like I mean, they almost never actually present actual arguments for this. They just sort of insist upon this. But even when they do present arguments, they're usually not very good. Now, there are people that try to make arguments along these lines. You got to watch out for people that are going to rely on a bunch of contestable assumptions, which is what you're almost always going to get with people doing this. And proponents of secular moral realism are just not going to accept those assumptions. And neither would I. So, there just isn't a particularly good case for this. I don't know why people push this idea. So it's just a very strange thing.
randomly pick a culture in history. What about Germany in the 1940s or the...
Yeah, so this is a weird test. So if you're a Christian and you think that the Bible is inspired by God or it's the word of God and it's like the book is inerrant, there's a lot of things you could think. Maybe you don't think some of those things as a Christian, but you do have this issue where the Bible, at the very least, contains lots of stuff that's supposed to prescribe action for Christians. Now, that isn't to say if the Bible describes a massacre, that it's prescribing that Christians go commit a massacre of a similar magnitude, because, if some person committed a massacre in the Bible, it doesn't mean that it's saying, hey, forever and always commit similar massacres. That doesn't have to be the case. But this idea of a comparison to why wouldn't you, let's pick a random culture throughout history and what? If you're an anti-realist, you're supposed to do what they do. I don't subscribe to the view that I ought to do whatever my culture prescribes for me to do. Why would I think that? It's very, very strange to think that if you say, hey, I'm a Christian, I follow this book over here, and I say, okay, well, open up to a random page and do something in that book, and you're like, whoa, hold on there a minute, buddy. That's the test for you. Okay, what's the test for me? Why would I just pick a random culture throughout history? What the hell does that have to do with being an anti-realist? It's a very, very strange test. It doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Mayans. Your moral standard right now is completely arbitrary. To say those cultures...
Your moral standard is completely... I don't even know what metaethical views of the person he's talking to is. What if the person's a moral realist? Is he assuming that the person that he's responding to is a moral anti-realist? I am a moral anti-realist. So he could just talk to me. My moral standards are arbitrary. And guess what? I don't give a shit. I don't care. They're just like my food preferences. Yeah, they're arbitrary. And? So what? Who gives a shit? I don't care. What's the problem with that? What is the problem with that? I'd like to hear an objection to that.
Cultures are better or worse presupposes an objective standard.
No, it doesn't. So here, check it out. Okay. Does judging that some food is better than other food presuppose that there's an objective standard about what food is good or bad? No, it does not. Saying some things are better than other things does not presuppose an objective standard. That is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. If you are a moral anti-realist, there are many, many forms of moral anti-realism where you can judge actions as right or wrong in a way that does not presuppose objectivity or stance independence or anything like that. You see, you can make judgments about what's good or bad relative to your preferences or your personal standards. And you can judge other cultures like Germany in the 1940s to be bad. You can judge in much the same way that you can judge food made by people that you personally consider to be bad cooks. You could judge that food to be bad. It doesn't require you to think that the food is good or bad independent of your taste preferences, because to say that food is bad is to say It doesn't comport with my taste preferences. And to say that the actions of this or that group in some other culture are bad is to say, I don't approve of their actions. Now, you could say, okay, but so you're just appealing to your standards. That's arbitrary. Yep, I'm appealing my standards and they're arbitrary. So what? I don't care. I don't care. That's not an objection. That's just a description. Just describing them as arbitrary. So what? People will say this like, well, they can't just be. What's the problem? They can't be arbitrary. They just can be. They just can be. So when a person goes around judging other cultures, other people, other people's actions, whatever, this does not require being a realist or thinking that morality is objective. This crap that people say about if you make judgments, you're presupposing objectivity. It is not up to you what I presuppose. You know who decides what I presuppose? Me. I decide, not you. I am so sick of people trying to tell people that when they say things, oh, well, you mean this when you say that. It's not up to you. Fuck off with that. I'm so sick of this. I'm so sick of it. I decide what I mean. So when I say that group is bad, I'm telling you what I disapprove of. I'm not presupposing something. Oh, God, it's frustrating. It's so frustrating to deal with people that try to tell you what you mean, tell you what you think. Why don't you ask us? Why don't you do that? Why don't you ask people what they mean? Because you know what they might do? They might just tell you, and it might not be what you thought. So no, when we go around judging other cultures as bad, we are not necessarily, some people are presupposing. Some people are implicitly being moral realists. I'm not, and neither are moral anti-realists in general. It's not up to you what we're presupposing. But you know what's ironic about that? You're presupposing that you know what we're presupposing, because you are doing that. You're supposing it in the absence of any evidence, justification, explanations, or anything. You're just making blanket declarations about what other people mean without even consulting those people. It's ridiculous.
There have been so many evil cultures in history. You would lose this game. And to clear,
Oh, no, we wouldn't lose this game because I'm not playing this game. Why would I give a shit? Why would I act on what some other culture did? No. Mm-mm. Now, if I said I follow the book of all the cultures and I would do and would think is good, whatever random culture you put me in, then I would be playing that game. But that's not my view. I'm not an agent cultural relativist. That's a very, very narrow and specific view of metaethics that bleeds into normative ethics and has nothing to do with my anti-realist position. Being a moral anti-realist does not require you to be an agent cultural relativist. It doesn't. And I am sick to death of people thinking you're either a moral realist or you're an agent cultural relativist. So let's go over this distinction for the 30th freaking time on this channel, because apparently no moral realist can actually take 5 fucking minutes to go read it'd take more than 5 minutes. Okay. They can't take some time to read the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy or to go pick up some actual books. And you know what? Maybe this is the problem, because many of the books suck. Many of the textbooks in ethics that are taught in schools and many of the books that cover metaethics do an awful job. They straw man and they caricature and they treat anti-realist positions like they're idiotic and ridiculous. And even some professional philosophers conflate and mix up different types of relativism. They don't bother drawing the appraiser and agent relativist distinction. So let's go over it yet again, because I am so sick of the myths and the mischaracterizations and the absolute bullshit that you get when people talk about metaethics that don't know what the hell they're talking about. And if I sound mad, it's because I am. I am sick of this. I deal with this over and over and over. Lots of people on their channels that cover all kinds of content. I cover this content, the metaethics stuff. I got more videos on metaethics than probably anybody else on the freaking internet, okay? It's got 158 videos or whatever, probably 130 of them are on metaethics. Who has 130 videos on metaethics? Me, this guy. Okay, so let's go over it again for the freaking 78 millionth time. Okay, agent relativism. An action is right or wrong according to the standards of the agent performing the action or the culture of the agent performing the action. That gives you individual agent relativism and cultural agent relativism, respectively. Then you have two other positions. You have appraiser relativism that is likewise divided into individual and cultural. So you have an action, appraiser relativism is the view that an action is right or wrong according to the standards of the agent evaluating the action. Or the culture of the agent evaluating the action. And that gives you individual appraiser relativism and cultural appraiser relativism, respectively. So you get the 4 positions. You got, individual and cultural agent relativism, individual and cultural appraiser relativism. Oh, man. You could relativize the moral standards to something else. Here's what's ridiculous about all of this. Relativism is not the negation of moral realism. Moral relativism is consistent with moral realism. Do you want to see why we should think that this is the case? Let's do it. Oh, Jesus Christ. Let's get into it. All right, have a look at this paragraph here. Let's have a look. Let's blow it up on the screen. You could all read it with me. This is the Stanford Encyclopedia entry on moral anti-realism from Richard Joyce. Richard Joyce is an awesome error theorist. He's a moral anti-realist. He has really done a lot of work writing about this. He's got a ton of articles. He's got great books. Check out Richard Joyce. He's one of the better moral anti-realists out there. And he doesn't pull punches. And he said some pretty funny stuff recently. I posted on, where did I post it? On Facebook, on my, in notes on Substack and stuff. Anyway, let's get into the quote. Second, it is worth stating explicitly that moral anti-realism is not a form of moral relativism, or perhaps more usefully noted, that moral relativism is not a form of moral anti-realism. Moral relativism is a form of cognitivism, according to which moral claims contain an indexical element, such as the truth of any such claim requires relativization to some individual or group. According to a simple form of relativism, the claim stealing is morally wrong might be true when one person utters it and false when someone else utters it. The important thing to note is that this would not necessarily make moral wrongness non-objective. For example, suppose someone were to make the relativistic claim that different moral values, virtues, and duties apply to different groups of people due to, say, their social caste. If this person were asked in virtue of what these relativistic moral facts obtain, there's nothing to prevent them from offering the full-blooded realist answer. Quote, it's just the way the universe objectively is, end quote. Relativism does not stand opposite objectivism. It stands opposite absolutism, the form of cognitivism according to which the truth of moral claims does not require relativization to any individual or group. One can be both a moral relativist and a moral objectivist, and thus a moral realist. Conversely, one can be both a non-objectivist and thus a moral anti-realist and a moral absolutist. Okay, so what does that tell us? It tells us that when people contrast moral realism or moral objectivism with relativism or subjectivism, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. That is not the appropriate contrast. There is a big difference between whether a moral standard is relative or non-relative, whether it stands dependent or stands independent. Those are orthogonal distinctions, and I'm sick of people conflating them. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Stop doing it. Go actually read about this stuff. How long did that take? I said 5 minutes. That took less than 5 minutes. So go actually read about the topic and learn about the different distinctions and learn about the different categories. I am sick of people conflating this stuff. I'm sick of them not drawing the distinction between agent and appraiser relativism. I'm sick of people thinking that if you don't believe in God, you can't possibly have objective morality. But if you do believe in God, you get it for free or something. I don't even know what it is they think because they're never clear about this. Sick of that. What else am I sick of? What other silly bullshit do people keep saying on the internet? I'm so damn sick of this. Go read about metaethics, you lazy people. What is the point of talking about a topic if you don't know about it? You know why I talk about metaethics and I'm not talking about politics and, I don't know, obscure shit and epistemology and whatever? Because I don't know about that stuff. I know about this stuff. If you don't know about it, maybe you should go read about it. Go read about it. Don't even read my stuff. Go read Joyce. Go read it. Go. Go. I'm not stopping you. Go read it. Jesus Christ. And it's the same thing with people that say, everyone's a moral realist. Everybody finds moral realism intuitive. No freaking evidence of this. I ask for evidence. People get all, they just whine and complain. They just say a bunch of shit. They never go, here's the evidence. Or they'll give me goofy anecdotal stuff where they'll just say it's obvious. Jesus. I mean, at least, look, you don't think I'm aware of the types of linguistic analyses that philosophers do to try to show that ordinary moral language presupposes moral realism? So they're going to give you like the Frege-Geach problem, and they're going to try to argue that, we can at least rule out non-cognitivism, and it looks like moral claims are propositional. And then we could start doing these analyses of, well, if the sentence is relativistic, it's counterintuitive that people will be using it in that way because of this consideration and that consideration. And so there's various sorts of armchair reasons why philosophers tend to presume that non-philosophers are implicitly committed to moral realism or that ordinary moral language is implicitly committed to moral realism. They do have reasons. I don't think that they're particularly good reasons, because I think that they are rooted in misguided metaphilosophies that are grounded in misconceptions about how language and meaning work. That's what I think. So that's a further discussion that I could have with philosophers that actually appeal to those reasons. But the typical people that spout the stuff on the internet, they don't present arguments and reasons for it. It's very, very frustrating. Let's have a look at the chat, and then we'll get back into this. Oh, right. Cloud of Time says, just got over a sickness, feel for it. Yeah, and it's all mucus. I'm gonna have to go get a drink. All right. Tyus, is the occasional freezing due to stream software or is it the webcam? I honestly don't know. Yeah, Alex says, I give this video 30 seconds before I hear that atheists can't say that murder is really wrong. Actually wrong. Yeah, I call these misleading modifiers. It's a bunch of rhetorical nonsense. It's hocus pocus. It's people playing around with words. If you want the quick answer, you could just ask somebody what they mean by really or actually wrong. If they mean stance independently wrong, why not say that? Why misleadingly use a term that is rhetorically loaded? Oh, so we as realists, we think things are really wrong. And then you anti-realists, you think things are like fake wrong. And, it's it's bullshit that the positions are even named in this way. So realists believe in, non-naturalist realists believe in irreducible normativity. Naturalist realists believe in some sort of semantic thesis coupled with like weird metaphysical claims about like supervenience or moral properties on natural properties or whatever. Moral properties can be understood in a way consistent with the sciences. So naturalists get real weird with this stuff. But it's a bunch of semantic stuff and it bottoms out in trivialities. So, and really the naturalists aren't functionally all that different from anti-realists in practice. So you get the real fundamental framing is between people that think that there are irreducibly normative facts and then people that don't, which would include the naturalists. I don't know why they're not on anti-realist side. Because of the semantics, I guess. So if you set aside all that stuff, the issue here is that one position is called realism and one's called anti-realism. So, you'll even see people say, oh, well, if you're an anti-realist, you don't think morality is real. What the hell are you talking about? Of course I think morality is real. What the hell would it even mean to say morality is not real? Does it mean like I don't think people go like out in the street, I won't see a person going, that's wrong. I go, nope, that doesn't exist. No one ever does that. That'd be absurd. People have moral codes, people have moral standards, people make moral judgments. Of course they do. It'd be completely insane to say morality isn't real. What is it that I think isn't real? What I think isn't real are stance-independent moral facts. That's what I think isn't real. Why the hell would that mean I think morality isn't real? I don't think morality involves or consists in stance-independent moral facts. So what the hell? So realists should be stance independentists, and I should be a non-stance independentist, maybe, or something like that, or a descriptivist, because I think moral facts would be reducible to certain kinds of descriptive facts. So, like, what on earth is this framing that we don't think morality is real, so we can't say things are actually wrong or really wrong? So I do think that the only sense in which anything can be morally right or wrong is in the anti-realist sense, and that it cannot, or at least isn't wrong in any sort of realist sense, or at least in a non-trivial way. And so the only way in which I think anything is actually right or wrong is in the anti-realist sense. And I think nothing is right or wrong in the realist sense. So from my perspective, like conditional on my position being correct, realists don't think anything is actually right or wrong, and only anti-realists think things are actually right or wrong. So when people go around saying, if you're an anti-realist, you don't think anything is really wrong or that anything is actually wrong. What they're doing is they're saying, look, you're allowed to disagree. This is what it looks like to me like they're doing. Maybe they would say that they're not doing this, and that's fine. Maybe they're not. But this is what it looks like to me. It looks like they're saying something like this. Look, you're welcome to not believe in the objective moral facts, but if there are no objective moral facts, then there are no moral facts. You just don't have morality, because morality would require there to be objective moral facts. So this is what I call the halfway fallacy. It's a mistake where someone presupposes that if you reject their one position, you still have to accept their background position. So they're like, look, we all agree that the only kind of morality there could be is moral realism, the objective moral facts, the stance independent moral facts. We all agree on that. So if you deny that, then you're denying morality exists. But we don't have to all agree on that. The anti-realist could say, no, I think conceptually you have a misconception about what morality consists in, and conditional on that misconception, you would be wrong about, well, I'm not really conditional on. So, well, you're wrong about your conception of morality, and you're wrong about there being these objective moral facts. You're not just disagreeing there's no objective moral facts, but there would have to be for there to be morality. So the halfway fallacy is when you think your opposition can reject part of your position, but they're still committed to the other part of your position. No, they could just reject both parts of your position. I deny that morality is only real or actual or genuine or whatever if there stands independent moral facts, and I deny there stands independent moral facts. Only anti-realists believe morality exists in the way that I think actually does exist. So shouldn't I be calling myself a moral realist? I mean, what do I call them? Moral magicalists? Like, what do I call people that think morality has these properties that I consider unintelligible or ridiculous, like it's super duper implausible at best? What do I call them? Because I don't think that they think morality is more real than I do. They just have what I consider to be faulty metaphysical and conceptual presuppositions. So I think they're confused or just incorrect about what the world is like. I don't think they think morality is more real than I do. You know, okay, so imagine a person shows you a horse and they say, I know it doesn't look like it, but this horse is actually a unicorn. It's a magical unicorn that's disguising itself with an illusion. Now, if you say, look, I agree the horse is there, but I don't think it's a unicorn. Imagine if the person goes, no, you don't understand. It's a non-negotiable feature of this being, this entity I'm pointing to, that it is in fact a unicorn. So if you deny that it's a unicorn, you're saying there's no horse there. Clearly there's a horse there. So you're a moron if you deny that there's no unicorn here. What you're doing is if we both agree on the thing that is that we're trying to account for, there's an animal over there, sure looks like a horse, we need to account for what it is. On your account, it's a unicorn. Now, I'm not obligated to say that the thing that we both agree is there, the thing that appears to be a horse over there, I'm not obligated to accept that your account of what the thing is and the thing itself are identical to one another, such that to deny your account is to deny the thing. I'm not obligated to grant that any more than you're obligated to grant my conception, which is if I say, no, very clearly, this is a non-magical, non-unicorn horse. And if they go, no, that's a unicorn that I'm seeing over there, it would be ridiculous for me to say, so you're saying there's no horse over there? Because clearly the thing over there is a non-unicorn horse. So if you point to that and say it's a unicorn, you're saying there's nothing over there. That's ridiculous. You're an idiot. I wouldn't do that. So for whatever reason, philosophers and people on the internet seem to conflate their account of what something is for the thing itself. And they seem to think that if you deny their account, you're denying the thing. And then they'll say, you're denying the thing. That's ridiculous. It's absurd. It's very, 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 very absurd. And they got to stop doing this because it's real silly. All right. All right. What else we got here? We got to get back to this tab. And I'm going to grab a drink real quick. I have to have one. All right. I was quick this time. All right. Cloud of Time says, speaking of BS, see, I don't know if I want to go that far. Maybe whatever. Speaking of BS, anyone catch that Substack post by Humor that Lance responded to the other day? The bias framing, the assumptions, the inferential leaps, crazy. I don't know how people take Humor seriously. Well, Humor is a professional philosopher. I take him more seriously than I take Theist Brooks. Very sorry, Theist Brooks, but that's true. I'm going to post a link to that in the chat. You could check that out. So this is one of a 4-part series that is a critique of Mike Humor's article on his blog, Debunking Skepticism. And I am defending skepticism. So go check that out. The link is in there. We got Derek McAllister here. Amazes me how someone with no, I'm assuming he's going to type more there. Travis says, have you ever considered it seems most smart people have moral realist intuitions? Assuming you're joking. All right. Carlos says, when people say morality is real, they typically mean it has some kind of stance-independent ontological existence, like a tree. And indeed, it is definitely a misleading modifier. It's very misleading. Yeah, like that. Only your conception is real. So, like, do I think taste isn't real because I think taste is stance-dependent? Like, what's like normative claims about taste? No, taste is real. It's very silly. Yeah, Sapir says, Lance, I just say realist or unrealistic, and that as an anti-realist, I'm realer than the realist. Calois says, Christian apologists love to talk about moral philosophy without having read a single book on moral philosophy, about cosmology without ever reading a single book of cosmology, and so on. It does seem like many of them do that. And that isn't to say some Christian apologists and people like Christian philosophers are super knowledgeable. Some of them are much more knowledgeable than I am. They certainly can be. I just keep encountering ones that aren't. And Theist Brooks is an example of someone that just doesn't seem to be well informed. I mean, what's the alternative? I mean, he's definitely wrong about all this stuff. The alternative is he's well aware and then just says this stuff anyway. That's far worse. Travis says that's what Matthew Adelstein told me. Oh, what? That it seems like most smart people are more realists. Yeah, well, I mean, what standards is Matthew using to judge who's smart or not? Is he going to be an unbiased judge about that? All right, let's get back into the video.
Clarify, when Christians say you can't be a good person without God, they are not saying you need to believe in God, but that rather, without God, there is no justification or grounding of what a good person is. At the end of
Justification or grounding. It's very unclear what that's supposed to mean in this context. Look, I know that there are philosophical accounts of grounding that are out there and that sort of thing, but when people say this sort of stuff, where are they getting this from? So if you ask them what they mean by justification or grounding, you rarely get good answers from people in these contexts. Now, that isn't to say people can't give accounts, but like, what is it sounds like they're just imitating or parroting something somebody else said, because scratch the surface and you rarely get good explanations for people. I'd love to hear Theist Brooks cash out what he means by grounding or justification and why, as an anti-realist, I can't have grounding or justification unless this just trivially means that I can't have something stance independent, which of course I can't. So I don't care.
the day, everything is just dust and particles. How could you ever?
Dust and particles? What? Being a moral anti-realist, yeah, I mean, first of all, the person was asking about Christians. So, I mean, if they're criticizing Christians, I don't know the person whose video he's looking at, but I mean, you don't have to be an atheist. If you are an atheist, you could still be a moral realist. Even if you're not an atheist, even if you are an atheist and you're not a moral realist, you could still not be a physicalist. So why would you think everything has to be dust and particles? I mean, this is just assumption heaped on top of assumption heaped on top of assumption. Unless he knows who the person is, and then I'm mistaken, and then my bad. But this does seem to be directed. Well, is it directed towards the person he's responding to, or people in general? I don't know.
Or assign or ground any morality. It's all subjective to the person.
Yeah, so it's all subjective to the person or culture. What does he mean by that? Does he mean if you're not a realist, you're a subjectivist? What does he mean by subjectivist? Does he mean a stance-dependent cognitivist, or some type of relative? Like, what exactly does that mean?
Or culture. That's a bad system.
No, I hesitate to call it a system. So subjectivism, if he's using it in the sense of relativism, is ultimately a view about the meaning of moral sentences. It's the view that semantically speaking, moral sentences have an implicit indexical element. It's not a system. It would just be a fact about the way language works. What does he mean system? Like if moral relativism is true, that's how language works. Tough shit if you don't like it. Because ultimately, that's what it is rooted in, is a semantic thesis.
Now let's turn to the Bible.
Psalms 137 verse 9. Happy shall be the one who takes your infants and dashes them against the rocks.
That sounds a lot like the Mayans. The Bible is
what? It sounds like the Mayans in your moral system? The Mayan practices are not part of my moral system. What the hell is he talking about? If you are a subjectivist or relative, who knows what he means, because he doesn't make clear what he means by subjectivist. But if you are a appraiser relativist, it's not, other people's moral practices are not part of your moral system. Again, appraiser relativism holds that the appropriate person who makes the moral judgments is you. You make judgments according to your standards. And so there would be nothing stopping you from judging the Mayans to be doing something wrong. So what is he presupposing here? That if you are not a theist, that you have to be an agent relativist? It's very weird. But the assumptions are never made clear. They all seem to be implicit and presupposed in what he's saying. He doesn't come out and just say them. So it's unclear what the position is supposed to be.
This is not commanded or approved. The psalmist was just lamenting and crying out for justice, an eye for an eye, because as we see in the previous verse, that was what was done to them. This is obviously not a part of the moral system or commands for Christians. To be fair, you should actually pick from one of the moral teachings. There are a lot. Act justly, do not seek revenge, love God, and love your neighbor. You could show 100.
Yeah, love God, love your neighbor, all that stuff. That's all consistent with committing genocide and massacring people and doing all that stuff.
100 more verses. So if you were being fair in the game, we would 100% win. Anyways, to my viewers, the Bible also teaches
One
us
moment, dog's going a little
vulnerable. I'm burdened that you would
Sorry about that. Dog is barking. I got distracted by the dog's barking. Let me take this back.
all pray for some more commands for Christians. To be fair, you should actually pick from one of the moral teachings. There are a lot. Act justly, do not seek revenge, love God, and love your neighbor. You could show 100 more verses. So if you were being fair in the game, we would 100% win. Anyways,
we don't have any shared book of morality. What the hell is he talking about? Make any sense? All right, I think that's it for the video.
to my viewers, the Bible also teaches us to care for the vulnerable. I'm burdened that you would all pray for the civilians. Aid should not be exploited.
Yeah, okay. So he doesn't actually do the test of opening up the Bible to a random section and seeing what it says. All right, then. So Theist Brooks doesn't know anything about metaethics as far as I could tell. Says really frustratingly presumptuous and goofy things. And I'm just tired of people with these bad objections. I guess that's it for now for my... Oh, wait, give me 1 second. Oh, my God. You would think that 11 p.m. would be a time where I could get some peace. It's been peace the whole day, except for now. All right. Okay, so I think Theist Brooks should pop on here and have a conversation with me. I think that'd be cool. Carlos says, Lance, what book of moral philosophy would you recommend to beginners? I don't recommend any of them. I haven't found any that I would recommend to beginners. Alex says he's used his Substack comments, obviously. What are you referring to? Oh, I never did this. Give me 1 second. There we go. I pinned the blog post responding to humor on here. So Cloud of Time says, you can take humor seriously. I don't take him seriously with respect to his arguments, such as those given in the Substack post. Him being a professional philosopher only makes it worse in my mind. So there's a different... I get a little uncomfortable when people are like saying it, like my colleagues are full of baloney or whatever. I'm not going to say that about my colleagues. So I don't. I had a good conversation with humor when he was on my channel and on. Oh, I already forget the name of the other channel that the video was posted on. I thought we had a great conversation. I don't agree with him, but humor is generous with his time. He's willing to talk to people that disagree. If you reach out to him to talk to him, he will talk to you. So there's like, look, it depends what you mean by take seriously. Like, what does that mean? So do I take moral realism seriously? Well, I make a bunch of videos about it. So I'm taking it seriously in that respect. I engage with it. I take it seriously in that respect. I'm willing to hear someone out if they say that they have a good argument for moral realism. So I take that person and their arguments seriously. I engage with them. Now, do I think that there are any of the arguments are good? No. But, in Humer's case, Humer is, I really don't like his philosophical views. And I think that his arguments for moral realism are not good. And I don't like the way that he frames metaethical issues. I don't like the way that he argues. I find much of what he says very objectionable. And in fact, I even think some of the things that he said in that Debunking Skepticism article. One moment, dog is barking again. One moment. They just decided at 11:15 is let's go nuts and bark at everything time. Okay. What was I talking about? Oh, Humer stuff. So Humer in there, like in that Debunking Skepticism post, I mean, let me just show you some of the stuff that he says. I'll just show you. But, however objectionable I find what he says in the post, it's old. He has 2 posts, both called Debunking Skepticism. Here it is. However objectionable I find it, Humer is someone that's willing to sit down and talk with you, and for that reason, I take him seriously. Again, though, take seriously doesn't mean that you think that the arguments stand a high chance of being correct. I think that the case for moral realism is incredibly, incredibly weak. So that's just a different thing. My issue with Theist Brooks, I mean, part of the reason I'm so frustrated is that numerous attempts to get him to engage on metaethics have all been ignored. I don't like that. Maybe he would just say, I didn't see it because, it was a big popular channel. I don't know. But other people have asked him if they've tagged him. I find it like I would, if he just says, look, I didn't know that you were responding to me, that's fine. In that case, sorry for being a bit grumpy about stuff. But Humer absolutely has been very generous at this time. Right. So let's see what Humer has to say. And again, there's a difference between criticizing the things that a person says and then treating the person's overall, like, I don't know what you mean by take seriously. I don't know what that means. So let's have a look at what Humer says. There's a couple specific things I want to highlight here. Let me recall the first one. All right, I got one of them down. And what's the other one? Here it is. I really didn't like that Humer said this. Right, I gotta share the screen. Check out this line here. Skeptical stances make intellectual life simple and easy. It's a lot easier to just reject or pretend to doubt X than it is to figure out what the actual nature of X. Arguing with others is easier too. Just reject every premise the other person puts forward or claim to not see why it's plausible. So notice the 2 remarks, pretend to doubt X or claim to not see why it's plausible. Humer here is implying that at least some skeptics are dishonest, that we're just pretending or lying. I find that really, really objectionable to just presume that some non-trivial portion of the opposing side are just pretending and lying. This is the kind of thing where, if Humer wasn't Humer, like most people, if someone said this directly to me, like, I think you're pretending or lying, I just ban them or block them. I will not talk to someone that thinks that I'm lying. Like, if you say like that you don't believe that I believe what I'm saying, what's the point in us having a conversation at that point? Because now you say a thing, I take you at your word. I say a thing and you go, you don't even think that. Nah. And this is something I've seen Christian apologists do, where someone will say, I'm a relativist, and they'll say, you don't believe that. Just makes my blood boil for someone to tell me what I believe. Here's how conversations work. You say what you think, and I say what I think. You don't get to say what I think. And I really, really, really don't like it when someone implies or even outright says, as you see here, that people are pretending or lying about their views. And this is not even to mention how absurd and implausible I find the whole rest of the claim. Skeptical stances make intellectual life simple and easy. No, they don't. Skeptics don't just go, I don't believe it, I don't believe it, I don't believe it. Skeptics tend to have to do two things. I mean, well, three things. One, they have to deal with the anti-skeptics that are constantly hassling them and insulting them, like this. Two, they have to offer an account. They have to offer a kind of error theory. You know, I'm a skeptic. Why are other people not skeptics? What's my account of where they're going wrong? And then three, they typically offer some sort of like analog for the thing that they're skeptical of. So if you're skeptical of morality, okay, well, what do we do in the wake of the fact that we don't think that there is an objective morality? Take error theorists. So error theorists think, look, realists are right that when people say X is wrong or Y is not wrong or X is permissible, whatever, that they are presupposing moral realism, but they think there are no objective moral facts. There's none of these stance independent moral facts. So all those claims are false. That's error theory, right? All the first order moral claims like stealing is wrong, abortion is wrong, those claims are all false. Now, so the error theorist actually agrees with the realist. And in a sense, they kind of think morality doesn't exist. Like realists are right that morality is about these stance independent moral facts. There aren't any, so morality is not really real. Now, you could call them moral skeptics. Now, those moral skeptics, is life easy for them? No, because it's not like skeptics just go, yeah, no morality, and they go about their business. They still live in the world. They have the now what problem, and they've proposed various. You have fictionalism, you have moral abolitionism. They write books on this. They write articles on this. You have people like Russell Blackford that work on this, and they do awesome work on this stuff. So they're basically saying, look, if we're right about this, there are consequences to this. There are practical consequences. There are philosophical consequences. Let's explore those. Let's look into those. This idea that if you're a skeptic, everything's just easy because you just go, it's not real. It's not real. I'm not even going to bother to explain it. Absolute bullshit. And come on, humor has got to know better than this. Come on. It's very frustrating. It's a lot easier to reject. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not easy to look. First of all, I don't even find moral realism to be obvious. I don't have the kind of phenomenology or experiences or judgments or intuitions that humor has. But humor seems to think a lot of people. Hold up. Is this muted? 1 second. Was this not working? Give me a second. Someone in the chat, talk to me. Oh, you can. It was the mute button was blinking like I was Oh, that's real weird. Okay. I actually just checked the stream. Okay. Yeah, it was blinking like I was muted. Cool. I used to mute myself a lot. All right. So I don't like this remark that like skepticism is easy. No, it's not. That, implying that we're pretending. And then you have this remark. Where is it? It's in here somewhere. It's in one of these lists. It says convenient. Yeah. Look at this. Sources of pro-skeptical bias. Morality is often inconvenient. I mean, in all seriousness, this sounds like the kind of thing Christian apologists say to atheists. Like, you just want to be an atheist because you want a justification to sin. I mean, we're moral skeptics because morality is inconvenient. This is absurd. It's absurd, absurd, absurd. Moral skeptics deny that there are objective moral facts or that we can know what the objective moral facts are. This has absolutely nothing to do with their everyday commitments to doing what they believe is right or wrong. Now, they might say, I don't technically believe it's right or wrong, depending on the kind of skeptic, but they still have values. So you could call them moral values instead of moral beliefs. And they act on those. These people care about their families. They don't want to see people suffer. They try to do the quote unquote right thing. So this idea that people would be motivated by moral skepticism for like practical or normative reasons is ridiculous. I've never seen any indication that moral skeptics are any less disposed towards doing what the rest of us would consider right or wrong than realists. So where is this coming from? As if we want to make excuses to do bad things? Is there any basis for that claim? I don't think so. So I really find both of those claims from humor very, very objectionable. All right, let's have a look at the chat and then I'll head out of here. Wow, that was 50 minutes. Cool. All right. Carlos says, I think it's just a way to dismiss criticism from skeptics by trying to reframe counter-arguments or skepticism as being the problem instead of the faults in the argument. Yep, I mean, that whole post is about why we should ignore them. I mean, you should read the end of the post. Cloud of Time says, quote, humor has got to know better than this. Come on. Exactly. That's it. That's what I mean by I don't understand how people take him seriously with respect to him being a professional philosopher. Well, he might say the same to me, you know? So I'll leave it to the audience to judge. So I'm going to treat people differently when they are willing to talk than when they are not, and when they avoid talking to people that, you know, study the topic or whatever. JPW says, I'm at Cloud of Time. I'm actually sympathetic to your frustration. I didn't think it's malicious, though. Well, you didn't think what's malicious? What are you talking about? I think there's some block for lands that he doesn't, that doesn't recognize that it's impossible to be nuanced or precise and thorough in a comment section, so he takes everything strictly at face value. What are you referring to, JPW? But I don't believe it's disingenuous. I just don't know what you're referring to. If you could clarify, that'd be helpful. All right, maybe I got to go back. Carlos had said, the line notion aside, the complaint about skeptics not having an argument or just rejecting things is annoying. The affirmative has the burden. Sure, it might not be as engaging as providing their own account, but that's not needed to counter or reject the affirmative position. So why are we complaining? It's like being a lawyer and the prosecution starts complaining that you're just trying to debunk them and not giving your own suspect. Yeah, that's a good analogy. That's the only thing that the defense has to do is overturn the prosecution. That's it. They don't have to make highlight another suspect. Humor and expect more from professional philosophers. You say similar things other philosophers in videos. I do expect more of them. I guess I'm getting nitpicky about the specific phrase "take seriously," because I think that's very ambiguous and hard to interpret. So that's all I'm really doing. And keep in mind, you point this out, and then I go out of my way to go to his article and highlight things that I think are objectionable. I mean, very, very objectionable. To imply that skeptics might be dishonest or pretending, I think that's messed up. And I think humor really messed up saying that. I think it's not just a bad argument, and it's not true. It's bad. It's like bad. This is a bad way to engage with the opposition, to imply that they're dishonest. It's really like a shot below the belt, and it's not something that a professional philosopher should do. And I'm happy to say that, and I hope humor sees this, because I just consider that. I mean, the whole post is just psychologizing the opposition, and you'll see in my, you'll see that I wrote like I don't know, 25,000 words, some absurd amount of words on this. It's so if you think I'm not willing to take the heat to humor, you're very, very mistaken. But I just treat people differently when they're willing to talk to me. So, and when they're willing to engage with the opposition, I do think he could be a little flippant and dismissive. And that's not good. But there's a big difference between that and someone that won't read about the topic and won't engage with people. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's something, if you're up for a voice chat about it, I'd be happy to talk to you. It could be private. It could be in my Discord. It could be on here. Maybe we'll agree, and we have, it's possible that we disagree. But if we do, I don't think it's going to be that big of a disagreement. And if we don't disagree, it might just be that it turns out we'll discover that we just frame or word things differently, but actually feels pretty similarly. That's a good point from Matthias. Lance consistently asks what the person means when he doesn't understand it. How can he be taking everything he doesn't understand at face value? JP's Cloud was annoyed at you're getting annoyed by the imprecision of taking seriously. Well, maybe I missed that, but see, Carlos, this is what I don't agree with. Ironically, it's dishonest of Humor to insist we're dishonest. I don't agree. If Humor sincerely thinks that skeptics are being dishonest, he's not being dishonest. To be dishonest is to intentionally say what you believe is not the case. I don't have telepathy. How the hell would I know if Humor was being dishonest? Unless I had some concrete evidence. The fact is, I just wouldn't. So I don't think people should go around accusing other people of being dishonest unless they have some sort of external, knock the camera off. Unless they have like external corroborating evidence of the dishonesty. You know, if someone says, hey, if I say, hey, did you steal cookies from the cookie jar? And someone says, no. And I go, why are there crumbs all over your face? I think you're being dishonest. That is when it's okay to accuse somebody of dishonesty. But if you just don't know where the cookies went, you shouldn't be accusing people of stealing the cookies. And so when, philosophers say stuff, people accuse people. I get accused at least once a month, maybe more than once a month. I've started saving, I started screenshotting all these instances of people saying that I'm lying, I'm pretending, I'm being disingenuous, I don't mean what I believe. I get accused of this all the time. Now, I have special access to what I think. So when I see people say this, I know they're wrong because I know what I think. And it's really frustrating because there's no way to really deal with a charge that you're lying. You can't prove you're not lying. No one can see inside your mind. So it's a really devious thing to inject into a discussion. I really wish Humor wouldn't do this. Accuse us of pretending. It's messed up. It's not cool. It's very disappointing. But I'm not gonna return the favor unless I have really good reason. Now, I often will suspect it, but I try to leave it out of my discussions. And when I do get frustrated, I might say, that person's just not being honest. Because it's not like I don't make the same judgments the rest of you do, that in this or that case, a person's being dishonest. But I don't think that we should inject that into the conversation. I think we should keep it to ourselves most of the time. If you have independent corroborating evidence that a person's being dishonest, fine, present it. But a person saying things and you think they should know better, I don't think that's good enough. Cloud says, I wish I could voice chat right now. I think we probably agree. Live chat is not great for elaboration and comprehensive specificity. Sure, I could use clearer language, though. JPW says, I think what is meant by dishonest here is intellectually dishonest. Well, if it means something other than a type of dishonesty in an intellectual context, then I think the term is a bit of a misnomer, and I wouldn't use the term. Stanfield says, side topic, is there any work or research into establishing some empirical evidence for moral realism in any human population? Yes, there is. My PhD is in psychology, and this is what I wrote my dissertation on. So my dissertation begins with a rather extensive review of the empirical literature on this. There's a bibliography that catalogs all published articles at the time of writing, which is 2022. Well, I probably added some stuff in 2023 before it was finalized. I got all the articles in there. So watch my, do I cover it much there? I have a video with Joe Schmid over on Majesty of Reason where I talk about my empirical research on this. But yeah, there's a bunch of empirical research on this. The early study, that's a complicated one to get into, but I'll talk about the experimental philosophy stuff. So some of the first papers on this in the sort of modern era of psychology and metaethics, there's a book chapter by Sean Nichols called After Objectivity, I believe. I think it's 2002 or is it 2005 or 2004? 2004. That sounds right. I think it's 2004. And then Sean Nichols also has Nichols and Foltz Bennett have a 2003 paper, which is a developmental psychology paper with children looking at their judgments about response dependence. That one, it's interesting because it's a cool paradigm, but I haven't seen anybody use it other than in that paper. Pretty small sample size. I don't know if it's been replicated or not. So those are a couple of the early papers, but the one that really got the ball rolling was 2008 paper by Goodwin and Darley, looking at whether people think morality is objective or not. So I can't remember the title, even though I have a response to it and all this stuff. Just the titles are always like, "Is morality objective?" Like they're very generic titles. Not that there's anything wrong with that. So Goodwin and Darley published a series of papers in 2008, 2010, 2012. Wright and a handful of J.C. Wright have a paper from 2013. It's Wright, Grangian, and McWhite, 2013. That paper tries to respond to, develop on, and elaborate on the Goodwin and Darley paradigm. And then you have a few other people start entering the fray after this. You have James Beebe, you have Zylstra, I'm not quite sure how to say the name. Claire Sproul have a moral relativism scale. Zylstra created a metaethics scale as well, and then there's a couple other papers. One of them adapted some of Enoch's arguments into an empirical paradigm. Yilmaz and collaborators they took the old ethics position questionnaire from Forsyth and they adapted that into the folk metaethics questionnaire, I think it's called. So they have a questionnaire. There's a few other papers where people use ad hoc measures of various kinds. So there's a bunch of papers. I don't even know where to begin on getting into it's like hours and hours and hours and hours talking about that. So there's the Sarkisian paper. Oh, there's so many papers. So I don't know where to begin. Right at the end of a video is probably not the best time for me to get into it, but I'll say very briefly what happened with this research. So early studies showed people gave mixed responses. So people would give realist responses to some moral issues and anti-realist responses to other moral issues. You might think that that makes those people realists, but people started questioning the validity of those studies. Beebe noticed that early studies didn't include a non-cognitivist option. When he included one, it was one of the most common response options taken. Taylor Davis replicated that effect in 2021 with a more elaborate paradigm. I call it a flow tree, a flowchart method because he uses flowchart method. I can barely talk at this point because he has people go through multiple questions like conditional on how they respond to one, they respond to another. So flowchart. And he found that non-cognitivism was the modal response using his paradigm. And so did James Beebe, that it was often the most common response, or at least was very common across different items. What else you got? But Polzer and Wright didn't find this with what are called training paradigms. They actually found that relativism was the most common response option. At about 3/4 of the participants, they took people from Amazon's Mechanical Turk, which is an online survey platform, and they took people from, I believe, the University of Charleston's college students, undergraduates. There's been a few other studies since then. Polzer recently did a cross-cultural study. I don't know if it's been published yet, where they found very high anti-realist response rates in a bunch of different cultures. It wasn't a bunch, it was a few. Japan, I think, the US, and a few others. You also get this in China, Poland, and Ecuador in the Sarkisian study. And Beebe and Sakris have metaethics across the lifespan. So they look at metaethics across different age cohorts. So the bottom line is, I think most of the measures are not valid. That's what I argue in my dissertation. As much as I absolutely love this research and I really appreciate, respect, and admire a lot of the work done, I mean, it's such a challenging topic to do research on. I do think that the measures are not up to the task. And I think the main reason is that participants do not interpret the questions to be about metaethics. They don't understand the questions. And I don't think that's the fault of participants. I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't think non-philosophers think about metaethics. I don't think they have metaethical views, and I don't think metaethics is implicit in everyday moral language. So I endorse a view that I call it this. It came from Michael Gill as a philosopher, called metaethical indeterminacy. And that's my view. You could call it folk metaethical indeterminacy. I think non-philosophers don't have determinate metaethical positions. That's what I think is the best interpretation of available evidence. The second best is, I don't know, it would be agnosticism or something. At least that's my take on it. And then the third best would be some kind of pluralism. Oh, right. Oh, then you followed up that you're conducting. Yeah, I talk about my research on the Majesty of Reason video. I'll post it here. Why not? Give me a second. Here it is. So check that out if you're interested in that topic. Again, can barely talk now. My God. Oh, wow. So many comments. Econoboy, what is your response to individuals saying that you can't debate morality as a moral anti-realist, as in there's no way to debate what's correct morality if it's all preference? Yeah, so I wrote an entire blog article specifically dedicated to addressing that. In fact, I actually have several that address it in various ways. Let me see if I could find those. So this would be one, which I'll post in the chat. And basically, this is not true. So people argue about other stuff. I mean, people argue about what movies are good or bad. They argue about what restaurants are good or bad. People argue about stuff all the time, where it's not particularly likely that they're realist about the phenomenon in question. So you could debate stuff where you don't think there's a stance independent fact of the matter. I think that when people say this, that they are relying on a narrow conception of what a debate is, that a debate has to be about what's true or false. And I don't agree that that's what disagreements are about. So, you know, if you're trying to buy a car from somebody, they want to sell it for a lot more than you want to pay for it. You disagree about the price of the car. Does that mean there's a stance independent fact about the correct price of the car? No, it means you have conflicting goals. So what I say about this in kind of sloganized forms is, sure, okay, maybe there are disagreements about what's true, but there's also disagreements about what to do. And those are a different kind of disagreement. People argue because they have conflicting goals, not just because they are disinterestedly disputing what's true or false. So this idea that just debates or arguments have to be about what's true, I don't think that's true. People can argue about what they want to do. And so it's just wrong. So a relativist can and do, an anti-realist more generally can and do argue about morality. All right. I think I'm going to have to wrap it up there. I can barely talk. I got to get to bed. You know, like I said, I'm a little bit sick, so I get some extra rest. I'll see y'all later. This is a fun video. Theist Brooks. I really don't mean to be. I just got super fired up about that. I don't like to be harsh towards people. I hope you didn't take that too harshly. I'd be happy to sit down and have a discussion with you. Although now I probably ruined my chances of that because I got so fired up. I would like he might think I'm going to be a scary person. So what I will say is look at my discussions with other people. Look at my discussion with Mike Humor. So Mike Humor is someone I'm perfectly willing to criticize, and I am perfectly capable of being civil with somebody I disagree with. So same with David Enoch and quite a few other people I've talked to. I really like to talk to people that I disagree with. As long as they're respectful and nice to me, I'm respectful and nice to them. So that's the vibe I'd like to have. What I can't think of words anymore. So I'd be happy to talk to you. I probably won't be as grumpy, but no guarantees. All right, everybody. So that's it. Thanks everybody for being here. This is a relatively short one, but I feel pretty good about it. So yeah, I don't know if anybody knows Theist Brooks, but if you do, you could pass it along. I don't want to spam him and have 50 people send it over to him, but I'd like for him to check out the video and see what he has to say. All right, everybody. Take care. Have a good night.